Good morning, MISAC members. My name is Tim Williamson. I'll be your moderator today. A couple of years ago, I retired from the city of Petaluma up here in the southern gateway to Northern California wine country. Hope everybody gets a chance to visit. Sales pitch over. Thank you for joining us today. This is a part of an ongoing series in the MISAC partnership webinars. Today, we're featuring one of our partners from Central Sanitation up here in northeastern Bay Area. They cover a pretty big area. So Tim Heitschu will be picking in or joining us with that. In the meantime, our partner KIS is going to help us today see a demonstration of a ransomware attack. I hope none of you have experienced it the way I did, or if you did, maybe you experienced the outcome the way I did. So with that, I will introduce you to Craig Miller from KIS. Craig, take it away.
Thanks, Tim. Yes, I'm Craig Miller from KIS. I'm the practice manager for cybersecurity and infrastructure. We're based out of Fremont, and we've been working with a number of government entities, including Central Sanitation with Tim Heitschu for some time. And we're happy to be here to present to you the demonstration of a ransomware attack. You're going to see in a live attack how it occurs. And then we'll be able to kind of break it down and then talk about some of the items and tasks you can do to help yourself prevent and not have to go through this. I'll be the main presenter. Tim will be with me as well. Sources are listed here of what we are. You'll probably notice and recognize quite a few of them if you're in the anywhere near the cybersecurity space. I recommend that you visit some of these sources, and if you can, subscribe to some of their flyers and periodicals. They are very important in trying to defeat this stuff. Okay, we're going to do the CCC introduction. Then I'll introduce my company. We're going to go through a know your enemy preliminary, as well as attack types and examples preliminary, to identify what happens before you actually go through one of these attacks, and why that's an important thing to know prior to actually, getting into the successful demonstration, which is the attack. Then that's going to be on an unprotected environment. Then we'll do an unsuccessful attack, which is a protected environment, and you can see the difference. It'll be fairly obvious. After that, we'll talk about some defensive measures, both strategic and tactical, do some questions, and then we'll provide the close. Tim?
Thanks, Greg. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Heitschu. I'm with Central San. We're based out of Martinez, California. We're a small wastewater utility. And I just wanted to relay some statistics. Clearly, ransomware has been in the news a lot, especially over the past couple of years. And so these statistics come straight out of the latest annual Verizon data breach investigations report. So in that report, they list there are 4 ways that an unauthorized agent can come into your organization. They call it the 4 paths to the kingdom. So one is credentials that are stolen from other means. Maybe they're posted like on a paste bin site, something like that. Or they will steal those credentials themselves via phishing. They will exploit vulnerabilities found in unpatched systems, and then they'll also use botnets to break in. But what was interesting is that 82% of the breaches listed in the report involved the human element. So an actual person was phished. They were tricked into giving up their credentials somehow. So clearly, the human element plays a huge role into preventing breaches. And then of all the breaches that were detailed in that report, 25% of them, a little more than 5,000, involved a ransomware incident. And that's what Craig is going to demonstrate here today. So Craig, back to you.
Okay, thanks, Tim. KIS introduction. So we were founded in 1988. We were a white box bar back then. We've developed over the decades into a full service MSP solution provider. We have a number of offerings and products and services related to this that you can find us at kiscc.com. After Y2K, we focused more on a service provider rather than just a bar. As the standards came into play and developed, we, NIST and ISO and others, we jumped on board with those and started supporting them as best we could, knowing that that was going to be a very important move into the future. We officially started our practice in security at 2005. Personally, I've been doing this since the 80s, but the company itself, we officially set it up around then. We have been doing a lot preventing, defending, and remediating cyber attacks. I've done a lot of ransomware remediation efforts. That experience, you'll see some of what we found here today, and how we've kind of come about and put our capabilities together. Extensive history in proactive securing environments. I've actually gone toe to toe with Anonymous, blocking them from government agencies as they were trying to attack them, and we were successful in keeping them out, as well as others, but we try to do that on the front end as much as we can. We continue to find ourselves in the SLED market, which is, so the small education, small local government areas. We do a lot of stuff for some cities and counties in California. I have done stuff in other states as well. We prefer to work with organizations to build a proper cybersecurity program that's a best fit for that organization. And we really don't like to go into incident responses because that's, it's already happened. And at that point, it gets pretty dicey as far as what you can and can't do. And obviously you're already impacted. And then of course, at that point, insurance and forensics and a bunch of other stuff happens and the costs start getting out of control, as well as the exposure. We're going to start with know your enemy. State actors like Double Dragon, Lazarus. I don't know if you guys have seen any of this stuff, but the state actors are the ones like, China or North Korea or something like that. These are the guys that are come out of those types of organizations, those types of countries. The cybercrime groups are more they're money specific, as opposed to state actors, which are trying to find something or trying to block you from being able to do something, such as try to bring down your utilities or something like that. Cybercrime groups are like LulzSec, Conti, Cobalt. You can look these up if you have you can just take a look at some of these. I have actually ran into a few of these myself, and they're good at what they do. Now, the cyber terrorist activists, they could be anyone from a script kiddie all the way up to any of these. I've ran into Hafnium, Anonymous, Legion, myself, and Loft as well. All of them have a very distinct way of going about getting you infected, and they're really good at what they do, and they've been on the move recently. Some of them have been on the move recently to improve on what they've been doing in the past to continue their attacks. They're usually the cyber terrorist activists like Anonymous, stuff like that. A lot of times comes into, green. They might go after oil companies, stuff like that. And that's usually their targets. Individuals, I've ran into a couple of disgruntled employees that thought they were going to be able to do something internally to the system. This could be anything from extracting certain Excel spreadsheets or information sheets, stuff like that, to working with somebody else to actually ransomware. SANS awareness. This is one of the groups that I try to stay up with. They give you, and I know many of you but probably already know this, but what they try to do is provide periodicals at least once a week that lets you know what the industry looks like, what's going on out there, and they try to keep you informed. Not only do you see things like what you see here, but they also, inside of the top news, they have details and professional expert analysis of what each of this means to the people that might be impacted by it. So if you were to subscribe to this, you'd be very well informed. On July 7th, we had a warning came out about Medusa Locker. They've been around since 2019. They've advanced and started using a ransomware as a service model, and they seem to be able to, or they've changed direction so they can be able to target vulnerable RDP configurations. And that's a good thing on your defenses as far as like, what not to do. RDP, open inbound, without the proper controls in place is extremely dangerous. These guys know how to hack that port, and they're really good at it. Subscribing to SANS and alerting groups such as MSISAC is a great way to stay up to date. These guys will, if there's something out and has been validated as a problem, they will send an alert out. And if you subscribe to it, you'll know what that alert is and you'll know how to fix it. They'll provide you the information you need to get to correct the problem. So attack types and examples. When you're looking at a ransomware, there's a lot of things that go into it prior. It could be anything like what Tim was saying earlier about the botnets and various other things. But what the attackers have a certain process they go through. If they're like a state actor or one of the cybercrime groups, they're very detailed in how they go about this. So what they've done, what MITRE has done, is come up with a framework based on a number of attacks that have gone on out there that were big, right? So some of the ones that hit Israel, some of the ones that hit Iran and stuff like that. They built this model, and it aligns very well with any other type of an attack plan that you might know about from the military or something like that. It'd be very similar in regards to that. Lockheed came up with the cyber kill chain, which breaks everything down into phases, and where you can actually hit a block within the phases to where you can actually stop the attack prior to it being successful. So they give you points inside of that, almost like the MITRE framework. They follow this pretty well, and they will actually tell you where inside of their kill chain where you can actually take controls into effect to block the attack from continuing and being successful. Botnets or drive-bys, they're all over the place. So whenever you look at your firewall and you see a bunch of port scans, stuff like that from screwy IP addresses, typically it's a botnet just trying to discover and see if it can get in. A lot of organizations use these, criminal organizations use these to get the first foothold into place. Think Hafnium, for example. And once that foothold's in place and it reports back to its command and control server, then the attackers then can, at their leisure, and depending upon what they want to do at the time as far as who they want to attack, it's already there. They're just going to wait and let it sit there until they're ready for it. Campaigns from state actors and things like that. It's like targeted attacks. Again, this is your state actors, your cybercrime groups are going to do a lot of research. We'll talk a little bit more about that to find out who is a best target, why it's a good target, and then take steps to make that happen following the kill or the MITRE framework or the kill chain. The MITRE attack framework looks similar to this. This is just the top level controls at each level. You'll notice they're going to do the gathering of the information. They're going to develop resources to make sure they can get into your systems based on what they've learned on the reconnaissance. They're going to gain initial access, which is that foothold I was talking about. And a lot of times this comes up with, where the botnets come in. They're going to execute something. And what they're going to execute is it's going to be a remote access tool of some sort. They may dump a few other API type applets in there that they can hide. They'll leverage bits. Everyone runs bits on the background because you have to, as far as being able to, run systems and do auto updates and things like that. They'll use TSRs, which terminate stay resident infection tools. They'll create and modify processes and accounts as they can to continue their attack, all the way up until privilege escalation. This is a key factor of knowledge for you to know. If they can privilege escalate up to the level of, in an Active Directory environment, a domain admin, or on a Linux box, a root, they have the keys to the kingdom. Now it's a matter of how long they can stay there and what they can do inside of that Active Directory to expose and learn more about your environment so they can, attack deep and effectively. At defense evasion, you'll see a couple of scripts that we're going to talk about and show that do just this. By getting into the environment and leveraging some of a loose, secure environment, they can actually execute a PowerShell or series of batch files that they can then disable and remove and even registry edit systems using GPOs, things like that, or just the batch files themselves to wipe out your defenses, and in some cases do it in such a way as you don't even know that the defenses have been disabled. In our attack model, I didn't show this as far as the demo, but we were able to disable all of the Defender tools while Defender service was still running. So if you looked at the services, you wouldn't know Defender was disabled. It was still running. But all the features inside of Defender, we were able to silently turn off. So defense evasion and obfuscation is very, very prominent these days. Credential access. So they're going to brute force. They're going to do unsecured dump key loggers, whatever they can do. If you see Mimikatz anywhere on your system, you've been compromised. It's just a matter at this point how bad. But that's a very common tool. I haven't seen any successful attack without that tool being installed somewhere. Then they do discovery. So what they're doing here is they're looking for things that could be important, one, to attack, two, to avoid, like sandbox evasion, things like that. What they can exploit, like DNS, they can do DNS spoofing, things like that. This is where they're going to try to move the attack further and go lateral. And that's for the next piece, which is lateral, where they're going to replicate everything they've done on the infected system, and they're going to move it out and do as much as they can across your enterprise as quietly as they can. No ransomware has attacked. Nothing has happened up until this point. They're just silently moving around your environment, trying to figure out what is the best way for them to make it very painful for you and force you into, having to pay ransom at the end of it all, or if they're going to extort you, or if they're going to steal certain information that is going to be important for them to have for whatever reason. Command and control. A lot of ransomware attacks and others require some home base to work from. A lot of times a handshake on a ransomware, if it cannot phone home to the C2 server, command and control server, then the attack cannot be successful. Certain ransomware does not require this. It's very rare still that you see that, but it does exist. And the ransomware as a service groups are starting to use those types of ransomware, but just understand that that's out there. Exfiltration. So this is like the first part of what you would notice as an attack. Your file server slowed down, your core application server slowed down. Those are usually the indications that you've got something in there without any visibility or SIM or any kind of a detection tool that's on your system. The first thing you're going to notice is screens will start to flash on systems, and it'll start getting really slow. And if you start to try to do anything like bring up a command shell or something like that, they won't work. What's happening is they've already done all the preliminaries, and now they're starting to move the data. Your gateway protection, if you're logging some sort of like a syslog or something like that, you should see that. If you're running protocol analyzers, you'll see it. But the exfiltration usually is happening in the background. Normally it happens and you don't even know what's happening, because again, a lot of times it's not as impactful as, oh my God, the server's not functional or anything like that. It's just, why is the server slow today? And then that's all you know. So with botnets, it's what I've always been able to do is set up a honeypot, and anytime I set one up and put it right behind a firewall, I see the botnets. If they can partially get through the honeypot, I'll pick them up, and then you can actually start using that to block how they're getting in. Whether it's the IP address, a zone, a URL, specific ports, whatever the bots are trying to do. A honeypot's usually tell you what they're doing, so you can defend against them. So some of these botnets are Zeus baking Trojan. Again, you can look these up. If you're interested in this stuff, you'll see what I'm talking about. They're very interesting on how they function. The Storm, it's an email worm, spam, and a DDoS attacker. Mariposa, Trojan worm. We have Zero Access, which is a Trojan downloader for malware. And I have a lot of personal experience with Drydex. It's what I used to call it, the trifecta, because it would sit there and hit you with a malware dropper. It'll hit you with TrickBot. It'll hit you with Ryuk at the end of it all. So you got an Emotet, which is your dropper and your malware deployment tool. Used to be a ransomware tool, but they edited it. TrickBot, which is the baking Trojan. It was all over the financial system that I was in. And then there was Ryuk, which was the ransomware attack. Targeted attacks. Obviously, I think we've all had some experience with emails that look weird or look like they should be real, but they're not. I'll show you a couple of those. So it's phishing and spear phishing. Spear phishing meaning that they know something about you or your environment, so they can try to fool you a little better. A lot of times they get information off of your website, and then they'll craft an email as best they can to see if they can't fool you into thinking they're either a client, a colleague, or one of your internal employees, using some pretty interesting tools to make the email look like it came from your own site. They'll do a site exploit and compromises. So if you have a web page or a home page that people can go and look at, sometimes they're not as secure as they ought to be, and they can actually exploit those. Local access compromise. In some cases, somebody piggybacks into an environment, plugs in a USB stick, and the rest is history. Public facing service exploits, like the site exploits. So this is like if you have anything internal, like an Exchange server, Hafnium, or if you have a web server, that is maybe cross-site scripting or SQL injection, things like that they can do to try to gain access and then dig further. Who are targets? Good question on this one, and it comes up a lot. Government entities, infrastructure, public utilities, classified data, sensitive areas. This could be an extremely long list. What I want to say is that anyone with an exposed vulnerability to exploit and data and information to extort, if they can get money from you, you're a target. Or if they can extort you in some way and make you embarrass you in the case of the cyber terrorists, then you're a target. And to expand on that, in this particular case, as far as MISAC's concerned, local state, they're targeted. They believe, and this has been recorded a number of times, the attackers actually believe that you're understaffed and you have a lower focus on cybersecurity. For whatever reason that is, that's their perception. And they also, because they have had good success in other organizations such as that, and they will always support what works. So if it works in one organization, they're going to go after another one of the same type. K through 12s are like that. Community colleges are like that. And you'll see, you may not hear about a lot of them, but these are target areas that we've had to actually help with. If a public records, I tell them that you have grants, like in the college example, or a university, they know that you have grants. They're going to see if they can't make you use that grant for them. Entities in the sector normally have cyber insurance. If they think that you're going to pay the insurance, and it's because that's going to be less painful, then of course they're going to do that. So your government agencies typically have cyber insurance. Schools have cyber insurance. Things like that. They know this, and they're going to go after you for it. If there's any sensitive information, if you're a hospital, if you're a HR outsourcing firm, if you're anything that has sensitive information and require compliance that they can extort because they've attacked you, and now they're going to publish that they were able to get into your system and they have your information. The embarrassment, the compliance problems that you're going to have with the agencies that are managing that are pretty high. So they're looking for high payment as they can get. In our experience, what the entities that have been communicating with the attackers, it's been hundreds of thousands of dollars all the way up to 5 million in ransom. So it's anywhere in between. They typically know something about you to the point where in some cases, they know what your net worth was the year before because it's public record, and then they'll assign a ransom based on that. Okay, the attack progress. We're getting close to being able to see the actual attack in progress. So the bot or link or other initial attack gains the initial access. and to a compromised system. They get the rat installed. They run Mimikatz or other tools to get the credentials. If they can steal the local SAM database, they will. Then they will actually hash it, get into the SAM database, find out the administrator password, and then in most cases, a local administrator password on a workstation or a server. I wouldn't say most cases. In some cases, they're the same as domain enabled systems or administrators. So a local administrator to handle a workstation may be the same domain administrator account, user ID and password. They'll check this. So, and then if they do get into it, now they've got the domain information and they'll do the exact same thing against the domain that they did on that workstation. So controls and proper security settings would stop this if you follow some of the frameworks, but that's how they get in. They'll stealth install additional tools as the attack progresses. This could be any sort of malware, usually Trojans of some sort, that will provide them with a capability to dig deeper, go lateral, and continue the attack, make it as bad as they can. So if you do have access into, say, a police network, they'll keep hammering on that network until they finally get that access. And they'll keep doing that until they can actually get to the exfiltration phase and steal the data that they're after. Once they've stolen the data, they're going to do everything they can to remove your ability to recover. Whether that's a local recovery capability, or if you're using, some kind of network-based tool or a cloud service, whatever it is, we're talking human interaction here. So they're going to continue to dig until they can destroy your ability to recover. I've seen actual backups get wiped to the point where you can't even go into the drive itself and try to recover the BKF files. They've actually killed it down to the low level there. Ransomware is it's for-profit distraction in most cases these days. It's not the initial or the primary attack. It's the result of the attacks. So it's a different way for them to, in the way the attacks progress, it's a different way for them to get some more money. So they got the exfiltration done. They've stolen your data. It's on a torrent site or an onion site now. And now they've done everything else to impact you. The next piece is to cover their tracks. After they've done everything else as far as getting the data that the core stuff they've been after. They'll execute the ransomware, and then they'll do a cleanup after the ransomware is done. So once the ransomware launches, they're going to remove everything in the logs. Your event logs will be gone. At the end of the ransomware attack, they're going to do it again, just to make sure that everything was covered. And in our particular attack, it happened twice during the attack. Phishing attack email number 1. So we're going to renew our McAfee subscription. If you go to that, if the user clicks on the renew membership, it goes to someplace in the UK. It went to one of those like Digital Ocean or something like that the UK has. So it's a place where you can stand up a quick server and then bring it down, and mostly it can be done anonymously. That's what this type of site can do. Another one, this person did have a Chase account. The Chase account, and they hadn't been used in years. They got this email, and if they clicked on that, it goes to a Russian hack site. So either you're going to be emailing back and forth with Russian hackers, or that site's going to have a download link to something that's going to destroy your system and continue the attack. This one is more common. It's either where you see Clash Royale. What happens in this particular attack is it's really just an infected file that's got some code on it that makes it look like a PDF. You double click on it, it launches malware. This could also be a link to a malware dropper, which I've seen both of those. They're very similar. And this goes to a fake register.com site, and a little digging found out it was anonymously stood up and taken down almost within the same day. So they were just doing an ad hoc quick campaign real quick to see who they could catch. So you're going to prepare for the successful attack. So the attackers are going to get the foothold based on what we just saw. They're going to have the initial attack sequences. They're going to get some scripts to get a foothold in there, get an installation of an API or something else. And then they're going to make sure they have the proper script set up. So they're going to disable your protection. They're going to overwrite your settings. They're going to edit GPOs and registry if they can gain domain access. If they can't, that'll be localized to whatever systems they can get to. If it is, then they're going to get everybody. I've seen this go all the way down to the endpoints, just because they edited a GPO or two, and the GPO worked in downloading the malware and firing it off. Once confirmed, the preliminaries are set. They'll launch the attack, and the ransomware will then hit the machine. These two batch files we found in the Hive attack that we recently had to deal with. All we're really doing here is we're uninstalling the security client. And because of the system wasn't protected properly, it allowed it. Why wasn't it protected properly? Because the user was actually a local administrator on that workstation. Because that user was an administrator, everything that user does in the context of that user is administrative. And therefore, when they're stopping service is all allowed. There's no challenge against it. So this was using Microsoft Security Client, and it successfully killed that client. MS2 kind of does the same thing, only through a different way. It removes all the definitions. It disables the antivirus protection. It disables real-time monitoring, all the other pieces to that. And it does a GP update and forces it so they can force it out to group policy. This one is a removal. It's more, and all three of these were actually ran, even though there's some redundancy here. This one actually goes into the registry and starts wiping out security keys. So that once you do a GP update, obviously that's going to do a reset, and they can actually reset the registry and make sure all of this stuff is turned off. So they're going to turn off your security client, all the different components of it, your anti-malware, your firewall, everything. Everything gets, in this particular one, it stops or kills everything. If you reboot your machine, the registry's been overwritten and it's still gone. And when we ran these actually, when we ran them, the operating system never told us, even though the system was unprotected and all this was successful, the service for the Windows security client was still running. We couldn't understand why or where in this whole thing that was done. But we did a little bit more research, and there's a couple of lines in here that made that happen. I had to truncate this because it was long, and one of those lines actually did that. So a successful attack of an unprotected. So what we're assuming here is that we're going to have an unprotected system. So those three batch files ran, and those three batch files created a environment to where the ransomware was going to be able to be successful. It took us a couple of tries because, again, we're working with things that aren't designed for that particular operating system. It was designed for a separate type of operating system. So some of the gotchas we had to kind of work with to get it to work. And so the only thing you had protection from the internet was a NAT translation, public to private address translation. Other than that, there was no outbound filter, which I find a lot in firewalls, where they have a couple of inbound protections, but when it comes to traffic going out, they have it wide open. So that helped successfully handle the handshake to the C2 server. All right. So on this is where the operating system is. What I have up here is I've got Wireshark. I've got the folder where all the attack files are located. If you've ever been through this, you know that the user folders are where these usually sit. The program data folder, as well as the root of C. And a lot of times the files won't look like this. They'll have just an arbitrary string of characters. Once you know what the arbitrary string of character is, if you do a search in the registry, you'll know where these files are and where they've been replicated to across your entire system. And then lastly, I've got the process monitor set up on the bottom. I'm going to move this down here so that we can actually see some of the work that happens. This actually will tell us what is starting, stopping, and operating during the attack. You'll have a recording on this, so when you have access to this recording, so you'll be able to do this on your own, where you can see, stop it, pause it, do whatever to see what happens during these. If I don't get to pause it fast enough in certain portions of this. Sorry. Okay, right here, I've double clicked on this. This is the Hive ransomware virus. And as soon as I clicked on that, you don't see a lot over here happening yet, but just keep an eye out. You see the xp.exe was launched. Okay, so Hive is actually a very verbose attack tool. It opens up a command prompt and shows you everything it's going to do. So that works out pretty well for everybody. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to create a key and export that key. That key is going to go out to the command and control server. Then it's going to you can see what the key looks like. It shows you here where it is. And then once this is successful, and this is important to note, once this portion is successful up here, where it was able to export the key, it can continue. It will not continue if it can't export that key. So then it'll stop services. These are actually additional services it needs to stop so it can do its job. And first thing it does after that is it starts removing your local shadow copies. More advanced malware or ransomware will actually not only look for shadow copies, but there'll be scripts and things like that that'll go out and look for other types of recovery capabilities as well. Or a separate attack will occur prior to this that'll destroy those. Okay, you can see it's trying to communicate out here, and there are still some controls out there that won't let that happen. And then we go through our encryption phase. At this point, these files are not recoverable unless you have that key. The recovery key has not been removed from the system yet. And if you can stop this before that recovery key is removed, you do have the opportunity or the capability of recovering the system. But once that key is gone, it's done. This is a large file, so it takes some time. Now what it's doing is it transferred over from encrypting to notifying. Every folder that holds a file or that had access while the attack was occurring will have one of these files that says how to decrypt.txt. This actual attack took about an hour, but we truncated it for time. Sorry. I hit the wrong button, so I apologize for that. And over here, you can see some of the back and forth between the command and control and out. Now it's transitioning once again to the next phase, which is the shutdown. So during the shutdown phase, it's going to remove all itself and everything related to it. And then it's going to erase memory. And then it's going to destroy the recovery key that it used to do the encryptions. The only way to get it after this is to pay the ransom. And this is what the message looks like. Sometimes they get pretty fancy with these messages. The reason this happened is because the code that happened during the shutdown, again, this is not designed for this operating system. So what happens is you have a lot of portions of the attack that didn't complete or weren't able to run. And so you get the erroring out like that. Some of the code just doesn't work. And this is what it looks like at the end of it all. The executables are okay, certain DLLs will be fine, but every file that could be possibly interesting or important to you is going to be encrypted. So that's what it looks like on a successful attack. And that's just ransomware. All the other portions of the attack would take an extensive amount of time for us to go through. The unsuccessful attack. So we have basically the same system. And what we're going to do with it is we're going to turn on all the defenses. So we're going to make sure that we have all the proper defenses. We're proactively managing this thing, and we're making sure the user and other controls around this system are properly configured. In other words, the user is not going to be an administrator on the local system. We're going to make sure that the local security policies are set and according to best practices, and then we're going to see what happens. At this point, you're going to see the 3 batch files in a secure environment, whether or not they work. Right there, it just failed. Again, you don't have privileges to execute this command. That alone stopped this batch file from running. Same thing with this one. You can't get access to the areas where the registry is. You can't get in the registry. You can't get into any of the other areas to just shut down the antivirus and the protection. So when you run the actual virus, what happens? It tries to export the key. It cannot do it, and it fails. This is what you want to see. And the only thing that you don't see here that you should have is some sort of alerting going on that this has happened and it was unsuccessful. If you've got a SIM, SOC as a service, an MDR, anything like that, it should give you some indication that this was attempted and failed. Hopefully it wouldn't even get this far. Defenses. So I'm going to start topping, strategic and work down, because I think that this gets overlooked quite a bit, and I want to make sure that this is definitely on the top of your mind. Establish a program using a cybersecurity framework. I honestly don't have a preference on which one you use. They all basically tell you the same thing, but follow one, and then orient it towards your environment specifically that you can handle. Defense in depth and breadth model is the current best practice, which means go as far as you can, as much as you can, using different tools at each layer. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then when you put that into place, what it does is it gives you control points across your enterprise where things have to happen before access is granted. Deep dark web attack surface discovery and reduction, monitor, research, detect, respond. And whenever there's a phishing campaign, an email campaign, any of that kind of stuff, the dark web is going to have some record of it. And with the right kinds of tools or services or subscriptions, you should be able to see your dark web footprint. What does it look like? Who's got you? Is there an attack campaign that's got you listed? If so, then you should have the ability to, one, at least know that that's happening, and two, you can then use some of the tools that are out there to actually try to block that from continuing. This is an up and coming method. It's still, a lot of them are doing it not as well as they should, but a lot of the SOC as a service organizations are doing this. So if you're subscribed to them, you have some of this capability. Layering your defenses from the defense in depth and breadth model. So if you have a Cisco on the edge doing one type of protection, maybe you should have a separate type of system with another engine at the next layer. Reason is that if I'm an attacker and I beat one of your layers and you have the same types of systems all the way through, it's not much effort for me to beat all the layers. So if you split up those types of things, it makes it more difficult for them. Prioritize on sensitive zones, moving to lower security zones. Everybody usually looks at the gateway as the first line of defense. Well, that's true. But when it comes to actually protecting the sensitive data, you got to start there. File integrity monitoring, change control, access controls to that data, and then you work your way out as you get towards the gateway. So now you protected the gateway, and now you're also protected yourself against the stuff that's more important to you. In a lot of your districts, you have physical separation between SCADA type environments or CGIS types environments from the rest of your network. That's kind of what this is talking about, is making sure you have those control points. And always include bidirectional controls for not only your inbound, outbound traffic, but also from your lateral traffic, your east-west traffic. Wherever there's a separation of security zone requirements, endpoints versus servers, finance versus file services, you may need to put a control there, and do what you can to make that happen. It's paramount to have visibility into the anomalies and attempts of unauthorized activity. What I've always seen is that nobody can do everything, whether it be budget or because they just don't have the capability, they don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the skill set, whatever it is. It's important to have at least the visibility into those things. So I always say, if you can't get a full-blown MDR or SOC as a service, maybe you can get, a SIM or something that will show you the problems and kind of help you fill the gaps in your program and your protection. One of the things that I keep harping on in organizations, especially if they're using cloud services for email and various other aspects of your IT, implement MFA. If you don't do that, like in Office 365, for example, I see a lot of individual email accounts get breached, and without MFA, that breach or that compromise of that password, they will successfully continue to attack and spearfish you from within your own organization, and no one's going to be able to find that until it's too late. The tone from the top. You don't hear this a lot, but I'm sure some of you have to deal with this. But you need the executive level tone. They need to be supporting the program that you put in place for cybersecurity. In almost every case where that's not been done or where that hasn't been done, IT ends up being diluted and unable to put in an effective program. People get, people are able to bypass the program, and then of course that opens up more problems. The last line of defense is your recovery in a ransomware attack. Like I said, they're going to go after your recovery capability. They're going to do everything they can to destroy it. So that has to be a focus on cybersecurity, as because if that gets destroyed, then your only help is recovering from paying the ransom and getting the key. And that's a hit and miss prospect. Just reading one of the comments here. So skill set. So there should be some sort of a way for you guys to implement a training program within the IT department to get some of the skill sets needed, like a network defender class or something like that. So somebody can be focused on this. If you can't do that, there's a lot of companies out, such as ours and others, that can help you with that to close the gap on the skill set, to make sure that you're touching everything you need to, and at least identify those things that need to be worked on and help out there. Testing tools. Whenever you get this recording, make sure you look at this. Every one of these tools in some way can help you identify your risks. The Guardicore MITRE testing tool is excellent. It's Infection Monkey. It does every one of the MITRE attack framework components from an IT perspective, and it does it somewhat safely. So I would probably say that if you configure it correctly, you should be able to test against your exposure to ransomware, Trojans, any of the key loggers, any of the vectors of attack that would normally beat your defenses. It also tests you against the framework compliance settings that MITRE has listed out in their framework. Then Cali has Nmap, and I use Nessus personally. It's a pretty good tool. Identifies you against a SCAP model for vulnerabilities, common vulnerabilities and exploits, and rates them by criticality. A protocol analyzer, someone on your team should know how to run one of these. If they don't, then you should get them into a class. A protocol analyzer will tell you everything you need to know about anything that's going on in your network if you've got it in the right place. I usually have one between my firewall and my core router. Sometimes it's a core switch. And then of course, Burp Suite and John the Ripper are cracking tools to see if your users are using best practices for their passwords. If you guys are implementing some of those controls. Cybersecurity maturity. So if you do go after a framework, almost every one of them has a maturity model. Usually it's a 1 to 3. A couple of them go all the way out to 5. 5 being the most secure, 1 being the least secure. If you do it in groups, you can get yourself to a framework model maturity of 1, and then maybe in 1 to 2 years go to 2, 1 to 2 years go to 3, and that helps out with trying to do it in phases. The ones are the easier but effective controls that you can put into place, and then of course it gets more and more intense as it goes down. Know your gaps in the framework and prioritize from critical to low. Just like looking at it from the sensitive data out, you're going to look at all the gaps that you have in your security, critical to low. Prioritize on those things that are most critical. I know that sounds like a pretty obvious thing, but it's, you'd be surprised. Create and have approved cybersecurity policy. So this is where the management comes in. You can write them, but someone has to approve them. And that someone has to be high enough to where it's going to get listened to. So you want to do an acceptable use policy, instant response plan or policy, information security umbrella policy kind of covers everything. Remote access and BYOD policies, if you guys have any of that, or have a policy that denies it. And a multi-factor authentication process policy and capability. So you kind of identify what that's going to look like and what your minimum requirements are. And there's others. Some organizations have up to like 32 standards and policies in place. That's probably excessive in most cases, but know that could be the case depending upon the severity of what you have to defend against. What we can do for you. KIS can do consulting. We can do assessments. We can test your environment and your control and your framework. We can do product and service recommendations and deployments. We can do incident response, boots on the ground. I hope you never have to do one of these, but if you do, we've got the experience. We know how to work with the agencies that you're going to need to contact to get things done. And deep dark web discovery, monitoring exposure, and reducing the attack surface. So the tools that we use can actually do a lot when it comes to that exposure. We can see all the way down to the individual user what is going on, and if they have something out there, individual emails. If somebody's got a compromised email, we'll know it. If some site that you have is compromised, we'll know it. If there's something going on that's out of whack, or if a cyber group on that has your information, we can find out. And in some cases, we can actually go after them and kill whatever it is that they've got on you. So, Tim, I think we're here. We're ready for questions. I see that there's some comments. I haven't been able to actually get to them. But do you guys want me to take it back to the MITRE framework?
That would be, if you can do that, give that one about 2 or 3 minutes, that'd be great.
Sure. Search 1, 2, 4. There you go.
Craig, I think you stunned a few people.
Well, I apologize if I went too fast or if I got too deep into any of this stuff. I tried to make it as concise and direct as I could.
No, I don't think it was too fast. I think it was, holy crap, this is scarier than I thought. Stunned.
Unfortunately, I live
fine.
this on a daily basis. So, I don't intend to scare you. I'm trying to inform you.
It's a byproduct.
Is there
I
a
think,
product that you can use to detonate and test your security? Yes, the Guardicore system will do that for you. If you do that on, if you get that tool, if you want, you can contact us and I can actually do it for you, make sure it's safe. But the Guardicore tool is a really excellent tool. It's free. You just have to know what you're doing with it and what it is you're after to test. If you have I would suggest if you have a virtual environment that you can stand up a test environment, run that thing against that. It's an excellent tool. See here.
while we're waiting, maybe you can address quickly. Some of our members have been fortunate enough to get dedicated CISO positions.
Excellent.
I think most have not. And I know that in the past, I had considered sharing a CISO under contract with other agencies. Could you address that? What kinds of things can we do short of getting a full timer?
I'm in the process right now of being a CISO for an organization. It's a global organization, part-time. So what I'm doing is I'm standing up their ISO program and their framework, and I'm basing their framework off CIS. So I'm working with their IT department, both strategically and tactically, to implement all the aspects of those. So we have that capability within my team.
That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought the share one was a good benefit for MISAC, or being a member anyway.
Mm-hmm. Right. For if anybody has a quick question like, well, what can I do about this, that, or whatever, then we're here. We'll definitely help you out. But if you need some serious help, if you want, like I said, if you need somebody to help you stand something up, and we have that capability. And that's obviously it's a consulting gig. I saw something about a backup. How about getting it back from the backup? That's one of the first things they try to destroy. As I said, if they are unsuccessful in getting your backup, then obviously that's where you're going, right? Other than that, if you do have to pay the ransom because of other factors besides, like maybe your backups weren't as effective as you may have thought, you may still have to pay the ransom. If your backups aren't tested regularly and you find out a critical server was missed way too long ago, you might need to do something else. One of the biggest things I found with regards to backup, and this is very important to note for anybody that's on this call, is test your backups and make sure that they are held. You have restore points, and I mean restore points far enough back that you can identify before the attack. So these attacks have been in progress for months in some cases. So the idea of doing backups, daily and incremental dailies, and you do a weekly, that's fine but the problem is that if they've been in there and they started the attack 6 months ago, you have to address that issue. Even during the restore, you're going to have to know what was attacked before the ransomware, of course, what was attacked, where the source, what we call them patient zero, where patient zero is residing, so we can actually block this attack from occurring again. So those types of things have to come in. This is where the incident response stuff that we do come in, where we have to go back, find patient zero, make sure patient zero is gone. And a lot of times that means re-imaging endpoints in some cases. And then after patient zero is done, then we can restore, and then we can find out what the tools were that they used and make sure that those tools are not existing on the systems we're restoring. It's quite an effort. It's not fun, and nobody likes to do it. But doing it right will pay dividends big time. Because if you do it wrong, unfortunately, you're probably going to get hit again because it's still there.
Over even back in the early days of virus, a lot of our terminology and practices have paralleled the public health system.
Mm-hmm.
We heard a lot of it on TV, just way too much in the last 2 years.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
we're getting any more good questions?
Right. Now I'm getting someone from Chris Hanna.
You answered Chris's, or no, that's Caesar, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Chris Hanna, your comment is exactly right.
Yep, that's great minds think alike. Both you guys said the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So for so many years, all the way back into DOS, we used signature-based endpoint protection that was called antivirus. We've broadened, changed, and expanded that. More recently, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, the heuristic or behavior-based solution has become an option. Could you address that?
Just a second. I got a request from somebody to put this up. Oops. I went too far. Just a second. I apologize for this.
Went right off the end of the earth.
Yeah, click too fast. Okay.
While we're talking, I probably could do a commercial for the MISAC conference coming up October 2nd through the 5th with an optional Wednesday program. This is going to be the usual spectacular event. Once again, we're going back to Monterey. I believe, I forget the name of the hotel. It's the downtown version, the one that we were at a 3 years ago. So back to Craig.
Yeah, I'm trying to get this to go to my slideshow again. Let's go away.
Need Jane's help again?
Yeah, I think hopefully you can see what I was looking at here. All right, so they wanted to bring up this slide, so I apologize for that.
Don't worry, so many of us spend so much time supporting this, we don't know how to learn, don't learn how to use things ourselves.
The contact
So-
slide, correct?
Yeah, it's the last slide.
Yes, that's what we see right now.
Okay, so what was that question on the last there, Tim? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm just filling blanks, white space. Oh, on signature-based or versus heuristic-based endpoint protection.
Endpoint, you have to look at it a little bit beyond that. So those are still valid. You still need, I'm always a and B versus A or B type of a person when it comes to this. Do as much as you can. I typically am looking at behavioral analysis these days. What's normal, what's not. So that goes to heuristics as well as some of the other more common ones that are out there. So if you're using, I don't typically go after antivirus in a traditional sense. I need to know what else they can do. Is like in the case of you know, a lot of the attacks that I've seen, 0 days come out, antivirus definitions won't work. Heuristics may work, but if they're smart enough, they're gonna mask that. Obfuscation, like I said, is extremely important these days with the bad guys. So an EDR, if you have staff to manage it, or MDR if you don't, is what I would recommend. And the XDRs that are out there, as long as you subscribe to the entire thing with all the capabilities, you're probably doing okay. And it's the best you can do on the endpoints. The traditional antivirus, like you said, with just the traditional means, most of them come with sandboxes, and that's another good thing to have within an antivirus or a protection mechanism, as well as making sure you have the email portion of that taken care of. Your email attachments and things like that should have a device between you and your endpoints that will actually open those attachments, open those links, and verify that they're valid. Just to take that a little step further. So again, I'm thinking EDR, MDR is probably a better way to go if you're looking at something to properly protect you these days.
Craig Sai Kim has a scary question. If patient 0 is determined to go back 6 months, can it be cleaned up from the latest backup before systems were encrypted? I bet I know the answer.
The answer to that is it's possible, right? So the patient zero is probably going to have to be reimaged because you're looking at things like boot sector viruses, things like that, that it's going to be deep. That's the one that they sat on for a very long time. Hopefully it's not a server, right? If it is, then of course that guy's going to be in trouble. But that even that's possible to recover from a backup, because what you're trying to do is get to the point prior to the trigger of the ransomware, and then bring it up without a NIC, search it for all the patient zero dropper tools, the malware, things like that that were listed on patient zero, and then you can bring it up in a secure environment. A lot of times I don't bring up a server and put it on production until after we've done that. There's very few cases where I've had to bring up a server knowing that it is still exposed because somebody had to do something right away or whatever, there's an emergency or something like that. And then we end up finding out that trigger point is still there. And then, of course, because we had to do that, that system's out. So we bring the two environments up. The original environment stays as is. We create a new environment and we restore everybody to the new environment one at a time until we know for a fact it's clean, and then we put it on the network. And that's usually our process. And the process it's long and tedious, but it's required.
And hopefully you have cyber insurance that helps you pay for it.
Yes, that one of my first questions in an incident response is, do you have cyber insurance? Because if you haven't contacted them, and you contacted me first, I'm going to make you contact your cyber insurance.
And local
I'm good.
authorities.
Exactly. We have to have the reporting process established. That's why an incident response policy or plan is important to have in place, because then there's no question. If you don't have cyber insurance, you should get it.
And as a MISAC member, there's no excuse not to have an incident plan. It's been in the library for 10 years now. There was one done by Cupertino in Walnut Creek. It was easy to download and save as. All you got to do is change your agency name, and you have a great starting point. So somebody could answer yes when you showed up.
Okay. I think we're over by about 5 minutes. Has anybody got any questions or any other comments or needs anything?
Nothing in chat, nothing in Q&A. I think you're good. Any parting comments? Tim, do you have anything to add on the end?
I just want to say it was a most excellent presentation, and thank you very much, Craig, for your time and putting all this together. It was very educational, very informational, and I'm sure everyone on the call learned a lot.
Excellent. Thank you guys for having me, and we're here to help. I don't want to have to go into an incident response with you. So whatever we can do to avert that, we're here for that.
And everybody should know that KIS is a MISAC partner. So you should be able to get a hold of them that way. I had to do that not too long ago myself, get a hold of somebody for a question, and they were very helpful to me. Anyway, thank you, Craig. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, members. And as I mentioned before, I think I answered also, the material here, the slides and the video recording, and the video recording will have the slides, and the video recording will have the reenactment as Craig went through both of them. These will be available on the MISAC website, either a link or the whole thing showing up probably this afternoon. We'll announce it over MISAC Matters, which is the weekly, and we'll announce it over MISAC Connect, which is the daily forum. If you don't get it, if you get a digest at the end of the week, you should check the forum before that if you like. And these should be showing up maybe as early as this afternoon. This week's MISAC Matters may not have it. I think we missed the cutoff. It is Thursday. And but we'll get something out there, and hopefully we'll see Craig again under maybe at the conference, huh? Thank you again, everybody. Lisa, go ahead and flip off the recording.